The setting sun cast long shadows across the county fair, painting the Ferris wheel in hues of amber and gold. The crowd's cheerful murmur provided perfect cover for the five men closing in on Emma Harper, her back pressed against the livestock barn's weathered wood. The tall one Derek moved closer, his knuckles white around a hunting knife. The blade caught the fading sunlight as he sliced through her denim jacket, tearing the sleeve from shoulder to wrist. "Last chance, farm girl," he growled. "Sign the papers tomorrow or we'll take more than your jacket." Emma's eyes, previously wide with fear, suddenly narrowed. Something shifted in her expression, the frightened farmer vanishing like morning mist. Her shoulders straight and chin lifting slightly. "You gentlemen," she whispered, her voice carrying surprising authority, "have just made the biggest mistake of your lives." The first distant rumble silenced Derek's laugh. A single motorcycle at first, then another, then dozens more. The thunderous roar of Harley-Davidson engines swallowing all other sounds at the fair. Derek's smile faltered as Emma's lips curved upward. "What's a farm girl gonna do?" she asked softly. "Just watch." Dawn broke over Harper Farm in gentle waves of pink and gold. Dew-kissed fields stretched toward distant Montana mountains, 700 acres of prime agricultural land that had been in the Harper family for 3 generations. In the main stable, Emma Harper gently brushed her prize quarter-horse Monarch. At 45, Emma possessed a natural beauty that required no enhancement. Sun-kissed blonde hair, pulled back in a practical ponytail, laugh lines framing clear blue eyes. Her faded plaid shirt and worn jeans spoke of honest work and simpler values. "Easy boy," she murmured, running practiced hands along Monarch's flank. "County fair starts tomorrow. We're going to show them what a real Montana horse can do." The rooster's crow pulled her attention to the chicken coop. She stepped outside, breathing deeply of the morning air, crisp pine from the surrounding forest, mixed with fresh hay from the field she'd cut 3 days prior. Her boots crunched across gravel as she headed toward the weathered red barn that dominated the property. Built in 1952 by her grandfather, its time-worn beams held the history of her family in every wooden groove. Movement in the brush near the chicken coop caught Emma's eye. With a fluid motion that seemed oddly practiced for a farmer, she reached for the rifle mounted on the wall nearby. In one smooth movement, she shouldered the weapon, tracked the fox slinking toward her prize laying hens, and squeezed the trigger. The shot rang clean across the property. 200 yards away, the fox dropped instantly. Emma lowered the rifle with practiced ease, her expression momentarily shifting to something harder, more focused, a glimpse of someone else beneath the farmer's exterior. The moment passed. She returned to her chores, methodically checking the fence line feeding livestock and inspecting the vintage Ford F-150 pickup she'd lovingly restored to its 1978 glory. The truck gleamed in the morning light, its candy apple red finish, immaculate chrome bumpers reflecting the sun like mirrors. As she worked, her mind drifted to her father. Judge James Harper had been a legend in Montana's federal courts during the 1980s and early 90s. His uncompromising stance on organized crime had earned him respect throughout the state and dangerous enemies. The framed newspaper clipping in her kitchen told the story, "Federal Judge Harper brings down Midwest drug kingpin." The photograph showed her father on the courthouse steps flanked by FBI agents, his expression stern but satisfied. Emma's fingers traced the fading image whenever she passed. By mid-morning, Emma found herself drawn to the old grain silo, a structure that appeared ordinary from the outside but held secrets known to very few. At its base, concealed behind stacked hay bales, a metal door led to an underground room. Emma glanced around, ensuring she was alone before placing her palm against a seemingly ordinary section of wall. A hidden fingerprint scanner hummed softly, followed by the click of locks disengaging. The bunker below was cool and dry, illuminated by overhead LED lights that activated automatically. Gun cabinets lined one wall, firearms meticulously maintained and organized. A glass case held several handguns, including a 1911 Colt .45 with custom pearl grips. Beside it stood a Remington 870 shotgun, cleaned and loaded. Communications equipment occupied another section, older models but functional. A satellite phone, encrypted radio equipment, and a laptop secured in a military-grade case. Emma ran her fingers along the equipment, muscle memory from another life. 15 years had passed, but she kept everything operational, a precaution she hoped would never prove necessary. Her phone rang, breaking the silence. The caller ID read Liz. "Morning, sis." Emma answered, her tone shifting to something lighter, more casual. How's the weather out there? Elizabeth Harper's voice carried the same timbre as Emma's, though slightly more refined. Still sunny. Emma recognized the coded question immediately. There are some clouds rolling in from the west. Nothing serious yet. Need any help with storm preparations? Not yet. I'll let you know if the forecast changes. The twins had developed these weather codes years ago during their time with the Bureau. Sunny meant safe. Clouds meant potential trouble. Rain meant immediate danger. I've been thinking about coming to visit, Liz continued. It's been too long. I'd like that, Emma replied genuinely. The fair starts tomorrow. Plenty of pie and horses to keep you entertained. Give me 72 hours. I've got some loose ends to tie up here first. After they hung up, Emma leaned against the concrete wall, memories flooding back. November 1989, the warehouse at the edge of Chicago glowed with tactical flashlights as the FBI strike team moved into position. Agent Emma Harper adjusted her Kevlar vest, checking the secure fit of her sidearm holster. Across the room, her twin sister Elizabeth gave the hand signal, 3 minutes until breach. The target, Mason the Reaper Reynolds, a drug kingpin whose network spanned 5 states. Intelligence suggested he personally oversaw the execution of at least 23 rivals and witnesses. Tonight's operation represented the culmination of 18 months of undercover work and surveillance. Their key witness, a former Reynolds lieutenant turned informant, was sequestered in a safe house 30 miles away, prepared to testify. Alpha team in position, crackled Emma's earpiece. Bravo team ready, confirmed Liz from her position. Execute on my mark, came the unit commander's voice. 3, 2, 1, go. The breach was textbook at first. Flashbangs, synchronized entry, clear commands. But intelligence hadn't accounted for Reynolds' personal security detail, former Special Forces operatives with military-grade weapons. When the shooting started, Emma found herself cut off from the main team protecting their undercover agent, who had insisted on being present for the arrest. 2 of Reynolds' men cornered them behind a stack of shipping containers. Emma's training took over. 2 shots, 2 hits, both clean. The men dropped before they could radio their boss. She escorted the agent to extraction mission intact despite the chaos. That night, they caught Reynolds. As federal agents led him away in handcuffs, his cold eyes locked onto Emma's face. I never forget, he said quietly, his voice barely audible over the sirens. Not a face, not a name, not a debt. 3 weeks later, Judge James Harper, Emma's father, presided over Reynolds' arraignment. His ruling denied bail, citing flight risk and danger to witnesses. Mason the Reaper Reynolds received 30 years in federal prison. The Harper twins received commendations. Their father received threats serious enough to warrant family protection. 1 year later, Emma left the FBI, choosing the anonymity of her family's affawn over advancement through the Bureau's ranks. Liz stayed on, rising through the hierarchy. Their paths diverged, but the bond remained unbroken, along with their shared vigilance. Sheriff Jack Dawson's cruiser kicked up dust as it rumbled down Harper Farm's long driveway. At 68, Dawson moved with the careful precision of someone whose body reminded him daily of its mileage. His weathered face carried the dignified lines earned through decades of service, first as an Army Ranger in operations across the Middle East in the early 1980s, then as River Valley County's sheriff for nearly 25 years. Emma met him on the porch, offering a glass of fresh lemonade, a tradition between them since she'd returned to Montana. Fair starts tomorrow, Dawson noted, settling into the wooden rocker that had been her father's favorite. You entering Monarch in the races again this year. And the dress-up exhibition, Emma confirmed, plus my usual booth for the produce and preserves. Dawson nodded, his eyes scanning the property with the habitual vigilance of a man who'd spent his life identifying threats. 15 years now, isn't it, since you came back home? 15 years next month, Emma confirmed. And you're still doing all right. No regrets about leaving your old life behind? Emma's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. None worth mentioning. The sheriff shifted in his seat, his expression growing serious. We've got some new folks in town, business types from Chicago, fancy suits, expensive cars, staying at the River Hotel. River Valley isn't exactly a tourist destination in late September. No, it isn't, Dawson agreed. They're buying up land, or trying to, made offers on the Wilson place and the old Henderson farm already. Both properties border mine. Emma observed her posture straightening slightly. Yes, they do. Dawson took a long sip of lemonade. Their leader fellow named Sterling, he's been asking questions. About you specifically. The old radio on the porch played Johnny Cash's deep baritone singing about walking the line. Emma and Jack sat in companionable silence for a moment, two people comfortable with unspoken understanding. I'll keep an eye out, Emma finally said. You do that. Dawson stood placing his empty glass on the small table between them. This Sterling fellow, something about him feels wrong. Like when you know a storm's coming before the clouds even show. Emma walked the sheriff back to his cruiser. I appreciate the heads up, Jack, but I've been looking after myself for a long time. I know you have. Dawson paused before getting in his vehicle. Your father was my best friend, Emma. I made him a promise when you came back here. I intend to keep it. As the cruiser disappeared down the drive, Emma's expression hardened. She headed straight for the silo. River Valley County Fair had been a tradition since 1897. For 3 days each September, the fairgrounds transformed into the heart of the community, a celebration of agricultural heritage, local craftsmanship, and rural America's enduring spirit. By mid-morning on opening day, the fairgrounds bustled with activity. Carnival rides spun against the clear blue sky. Food vendors hawked everything from kettle corn to deep-fried Oreos. Exhibition halls showcased quilts, preserved foods, and prize-winning vegetables. The air carried the mingled scents of livestock, cotton candy, and sawdust. Emma parked her restored F-150 near the livestock pavilion, Monarch trailing calmly in the horse trailer behind. She'd spent the early hours arranging her booth in the agricultural hall, jars of honey from her beehive, preserves from her orchard, and vegetables from her fields, all organized with military precision. As she led Monarch toward the stables, a familiar voice called her name. If it isn't the queen of Harper Farm herself. Charlie Thompson approached with the distinctive gait of a man who'd spent decades straddling motorcycles. At 65, Charlie's frame remained solid, his handshake firm. Silver hair pulled back in a ponytail, contrasted with the dark tattoos visible beneath his rolled sleeves. Anchors and insignia that spoke of his service with the Marines. Charlie, Emma greeted warmly. How's business at the shop? Charlie Thompson owned River Valley Custom Cycles, the region's premier Harley-Davidson repair and customization garage. His mechanical skills had earned him customers from 3 states over. Can't complain, he replied, falling into step beside her. Just finished restoring a '69 shovelhead that'll make you weep. Original panhead engine with matching numbers, Evolution carburetor upgrade that doesn't compromise the vintage feel. Got the chrome looking like liquid silver. Emma smiled genuinely. You're still the best wrench in 5 counties. And you're still the best shot, Charlie replied, his voice dropping slightly. Though I suspect these folks don't know that about you. His subtle nod directed Emma's attention across the fairground, where a group of men in tailored suits stood out starkly against the backdrop of denim and flannel. Their leader, a tall man with silver-streaked dark hair, surveyed the surroundings with the calculated gaze of someone assessing assets rather than enjoying festivities. Victor Sterling, Charlie supplied. Been in town 3 days, buying drinks at Murphy's bar, asking questions about property values. Seems particularly interested in the land surrounding yours. Emma kept her expression neutral as she continued brushing Monarch. Sheriff Dawson mentioned him. He's got 4 men with him. The big one's Derek Miller, ex-military, discharged under questionable circumstances. The quiet one's Marcus, no last name I could find. The others stay in the background, but they're carrying under their jackets right side. Emma gave Charlie a measured look. You've been busy. The old Marine shrugged. Old habits. I don't like strangers sniffing around my friends. Emma secured Monarch in his stall, making minor adjustments to ensure the horse's comfort. I'm just a farmer, Charlie. Sure you are, he replied, the ghost of a smile crinkling the corners of his eyes. And I'm just a mechanic. As Charlie departed, Emma noticed a woman approaching mid-30s, elegant, in a way that seemed at odds with the fairground setting. Dark hair fell in soft waves to her shoulders, framing features that might have graced magazine covers in another life. Ms. Harper, the woman inquired. I'm Sophia Klein. I work with Mr. Sterling. Her handshake was firm but brief. He was hoping to speak with you about your property. What interested in selling? Emma replied flatly. He's prepared to offer substantially above market value. It's not about the money. Harper Farm isn't for sale at any price. Something flickered in Sophia's eyes, not disappointment, but something closer to approval. Before she could respond, Victor Sterling himself approached, flanked by two of his men. Sterling moved with the confidence of someone accustomed to getting his way. His tailored suit probably cost more than most River Valley residents earned in a month. His smile revealed perfect teeth, but never quite reached his eyes. "Ms. Harper," he extended his hand. "Victor Sterling. I've been looking forward to meeting you." Emma accepted the handshake with measured pressure. "Mr. Sterling, I understand you're interested in local real estate. I represent investors who see tremendous potential in River Valley County. Progress is inevitable, Ms. Harper. The question is whether you'll benefit from it or be left behind. I'm not interested in progress that requires selling my heritage, Mr. Sterling." Sterling's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. $3 million, Ms. Harper, for land currently valued at less than half that amount. I'm certain we can reach an arrangement beneficial to all parties. "The land isn't for sale," Emma repeated, turning her attention back to Monarch. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a competition to prepare for." As Sterling and his entourage departed, Emma overheard fragments of a heated phone conversation from behind the nearby tent. "She won't sell." "No, sir." "Yes, he's aware of the situation. The Reaper wants this handled by week's end. Property rights won't matter once we—" "Yes, sir, understood." Emma's blood ran cold. Only one man carried that particular nickname. Mason the Reaper Reynolds, a name she hadn't heard in 15 years. A name that should still be attached to a prisoner serving 30 years in federal custody. That evening, Emma secured the farmhouse with methodical precision, checking locks, drawing curtains, and activating the discreet security system installed throughout the property. In the barn, she retrieved a satellite phone from a hidden compartment beneath the floorboards. "It's happening," she told her sister without preamble when Liz answered. "Storm protocol." Silence hung on the line for 3 heartbeats. "Reynolds." "Yes, somehow he's connected to a developer trying to buy my land. I overheard his nickname mentioned specifically." "That's impossible," Liz replied, her voice tightening. "He's still got 15 years on his sentence." "Apparently not. Check his status. I'll prepare things here." "I'm on my way," Liz confirmed, "but it'll take me at least 72 hours to arrange leave and travel discreetly. I can handle myself for 3 days." "Emma," Liz's tone grew serious, "if Reynolds is involved, this isn't about land development. It's about revenge." After ending the call, Emma descended into her underground bunker. The space felt like stepping back in time, back to a life she'd left behind, but never fully abandoned. She retrieved the Colt 1911 from its display, checking the action with practiced hands. The weapon felt familiar, an extension of herself rather than a separate tool. She methodically inspected each firearm in the collection, selecting those most suitable for defense of the property. Next came the surveillance equipment, motion sensors, cameras, and alarms that could be strategically placed around the farm. Technology had advanced since her FBI days, but the principles remained unchanged. A metal case beneath the weapons cabinet contained $50,000 in cash, 3 different identities with corresponding documentation and emergency provisions. Emma had maintained this go-bag, religiously updating ID photos and documents every few years, a precaution that had seemed increasingly paranoid with each passing year. Until now. 3 hours later, Emma drove into town, the bed of her pickup loaded with supplies disguised as routine purchases for the fair. Charlie's garage was still illuminated despite the late hour. She pulled around back, away from street view. Charlie looked unsurprised when she knocked on the side entrance. He simply held the door open, then secured it behind her. "Figured you'd be by," he said, leading her into the office area separate from the main garage. "Sterling's crew has been asking questions all over town, showing your picture around." Emma nodded grimly. "It's worse than that, Charlie. The man behind Sterling is someone from my past." Charlie's expression remained neutral, but his posture shifted subtly, weight-balanced hands free, the stance of a man prepared for trouble. "How bad?" "Mason Reynolds." Charlie's eyes widened slightly, the only indication that the name held meaning. "The Reaper Chicago drug operation. Your father's case." Emma shouldn't have been surprised that Charlie knew. The old Marine had always known more than he let on. "I need your help," she said simply. Charlie nodded once. "What kind of timeline are we looking at?" 3 days, maybe less. My sister's on her way, but until then, it's just me. Charlie crossed to a battered filing cabinet in the corner, unlocking the bottom drawer with a key from his pocket. Inside lay several prepaid cell phones, a handgun similar to Emma's own, and a leather-bound ledger. The phones are clean, no registration paid cash. He handed her two. The ledger contains names, people I trust, people who owe me favors. Emma opened the book. Each page contained names, contact information, and notes, most with military designations. Charlie, what exactly did you do after leaving the Marines? A ghost of a smile crossed his weathered features. Let's just say I didn't spend all my time fixing motorcycles. He flipped to the back of the ledger, revealing a patch emblazoned with an eagle clutching thunderbolts in its talons. Thundering Eagles, 99 members across 3 states, all former military or law enforcement, all still believe in certain principles. A motorcycle club, Emma stated, the pieces falling into place. We prefer association of like-minded veterans, Charlie corrected. We formed back in '85 when too many of our brothers were coming home to nothing. No support, no purpose. We created both. And you're their leader. Founding member, current road captain. Charlie closed the ledger. One call from me brings 98 riders who still remember their oaths to protect and serve. Emma absorbed this revelation. I can't ask you to risk your people in my fight. You didn't ask, I offered. Charlie's expression grew serious. Besides, this isn't just your fight. If Reynolds is moving into River Valley County, it affects everyone. Drugs, corruption, violence, that's his business model. Your farm is just the beginning. Emma nodded slowly. We need to make preparations. Defensive positions, communication protocols. Like old times, Charlie interjected with a knowing look. Emma paused, studying him carefully. How long have you known about your previous career since you moved back? Your father mentioned it once, not details, just that his daughters were serving their country in ways he couldn't discuss. Later, I noticed certain habits, the way you scan rooms, maintain sight lines to exits, check your vehicle before entering. Professional habits. Emma felt a weight lifting, the relief of being truly seen after years of careful concealment. I'll need supplies, things I can't buy locally without raising questions. Charlie reached for a notepad. Make your list. I've got contacts in Billings who won't ask questions. As she detailed her requirements, Emma realized she'd slipped effortlessly back into operational planning, assessing threats, identifying vulnerabilities, establishing contingencies. The farm girl had receded. The agent had returned. One more thing, Charlie added as she prepared to leave. Sterling's assistant, the woman, Sophia, what about her? She came into the garage yesterday, asked about motorcycle rentals. While I was getting paperwork, she left this. He handed Emma a folded napkin, written in precise handwriting. Not what you think. Need to talk. Alone. Could be a trap, Emma cautioned. Or an asset, Charlie countered. Either way, information is information. Emma pocketed the napkin. I'll handle it. As she drove home through the darkness, Emma's thoughts turned to her father. Judge James Harper had lived by a simple code: stand your ground for what's right, no matter the cuts. That principle had guided his judicial decisions, his parenting, and ultimately may have cost him his life. The official report labeled his fatal heart attack as natural causes. Emma had always harbored doubts. Now, with Reynolds back in play, those doubts crystallized into certainty. Her father's death, her forced retirement, the sudden interest in her land, all connected by an invisible thread of vengeance, 15 years in the making. Tomorrow she would return to the fair as Emma Harper, local farmer. She would smile and discuss crops and compete in equestrian events. But beneath that facade, plans were forming. The hunter had become the hunted, only Reynolds didn't realize his target had fangs of her own. Storm clouds were indeed gathering over River Valley County, and Emma Harper had always been good at weathering storms. The second day of the county fair dawned bright and clear, a perfect Montana autumn day that belied the gathering storm. Emma arrived early, tending to Monarch before the crowds arrived. Her booth in the agricultural hall had already earned a blue ribbon for her wildflower honey, a small victory that would once have been the highlight of her fair experience. Now it seemed trivial against the backdrop of approaching danger. Sterling's men maintained a visible presence throughout the fairgrounds, Derek's imposing figure particularly conspicuous as he trailed Emma between exhibits. Not bothering to hide his surveillance, he clearly intended to intimidate. By mid-afternoon, Emma had completed her scheduled demonstrations and was adjusting Monarch's tack for the dressage competition when Sheriff Dawson approached. "Got a moment?" he asked, gesturing toward a quiet corner of the stables. Emma followed, noting the unusual tension in his posture. "Sterling's people have been asking about your property boundaries," Dawson began without preamble, "specifically about access roads and the northern creek that runs through your land. The creek that happens to connect to the interstate through Forest Service roads," Emma noted. "Exactly." Dawson lowered his voice. "I've been in law enforcement long enough to recognize certain patterns. The questions they're asking, they're looking at your land for something specific." "A trafficking route," Emma supplied. Dawson's eyebrows rose slightly. "You seem unsurprised." Emma chose her words carefully. "Let's just say this isn't my first encounter with people like Sterling." Before Dawson could respond, commotion erupted from the nearby paddock where Monarch had been secured. Emma rushed toward the sound, the sheriff close behind. Derek and another of Sterling's men stood beside the open gate, Monarch's lead rope in Derek's hand. The prize horse danced nervously as Derek yanked roughly at the halter. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Emma demanded, her voice carrying the unmistakable tone of command. "Just admiring your horse," Derek replied with a smirk. "Fine animal. Be a shame if anything happened to him." Sheriff Dawson stepped forward. "That's enough. This is private property you're interfering with." Derek's expression darkened. "Careful, Sheriff. Your retirement's coming up soon. Would be terrible if your pension got tied up in complications. Are you threatening an officer of the law?" Dawson's hand moved instinctively toward his sidearm. "Just making conversation." Derek released the horse with a dismissive shove. "Mr. Sterling wanted me to remind Mrs. Harper that his offer expires tomorrow. After that, things get less valuable." As Sterling's men departed, Emma quickly checked Monarch for injuries. The horse seemed shaken, but unharmed. "That was a direct threat," Dawson observed quietly. "Yes, it was." Emma's voice remained steady, but her eyes tracked Derek's movement through the crowd with cold calculation. "I can have deputies patrol your property tonight," Dawson offered. Emma shook her head. "Thanks, but I'll be fine. Better to keep your people in town protecting the fair visitors." Dawson studied her face. "You know, you remind me more of your father every day. He never backed down either, even when he should have." The comment struck closer to home than Dawson could know. After the sheriff departed, Emma continued preparing Monarch for the afternoon competition. She maintained the outward calm expected of an experienced equestrian, but her senses remained hyper-alert, cataloging exits, tracking Sterling's men through the crowd, identifying potential weapons in her surroundings. The competition itself passed in a blur of practice movements. Monarch performed flawlessly, earning admiring applause from the gathered spectators. Emma accepted the first-place ribbon with a smile that never reached her eyes, her attention focused on Sterling, watching from the VIP section. As she led Monarch back to the stables, a woman stepped into her path. Sophia, Sterling's elegant assistant, now dressed more casually in jeans and a light sweater. "Congratulations on your win," Sophia said, her voice pitched for privacy despite the public setting. "Your horse is magnificent." "Thank you." Emma remained guarded, remembering the note Charlie had shown her. "I wonder if I might commission a tour of your farm." Sophia continued, her eyes conveying a different message than her words. "Perhaps tomorrow morning before the fair opens. I've always been fascinated by sustainable agriculture." Emma recognized the request for what it was, a plea for private conversation away from Sterling's surveillance or remis. 7 a.m., Emma agreed. "The address is on my business cards at my booth." Sophia nodded slightly, then continued on her way without further comment. As the fair wound down for the day, Emma made one final circuit, noting positions of Sterling's men and potential exit routes. The tactical assessment came naturally, muscle memory from her training reasserting itself with each passing hour. The drive home provided temporary solitude, time to process the day's events and finalize preparations. Emma took an indirect route, making several unnecessary turns to confirm she wasn't being followed. At the farm's entrance, she paused to inspect the dirt road, looking for fresh tire tracks or disturbed gravel. Nothing seemed immediately amiss, but instinct told her to proceed with caution. The house appeared undisturbed as she approached. Too undisturbed, in fact. The cardinal that typically nested in the porch eaves was conspicuously absent. The porch swing hung motionless despite the light evening breeze that should have set it gently moving. Someone had been here. Recently. Emma drove past the house as if continuing to the back barn, her hand moving to the shotgun secured beneath her truck's seat. Instead of pulling directly into the yard, she circled behind the equipment shed, killed the engine, and waited listening. Twilight deepened around the farm as Emma observed from shadow. 20 minutes passed before movement caught her eye, a figure emerging briefly from behind the chicken coop before disappearing into the tree line beyond. Amateur work. Professional surveillance would have remained completely hidden. Emma slipped from the truck, shotgun in hand, and moved through the familiar terrain with practiced stealth. Her boots made no sound on the soft earth as she circled wide around the property, approaching from the opposite direction of the retreating figure. The tree line provided perfect cover as she advanced. 15 years of civilian life fell away completely, now her movements those of a predator rather than prey. She found evidence of the intrusion, quickly cigarette butts near the back porch, muddy boot prints by the kitchen window, a partially visible fingerprint on the back door handle. They hadn't bothered being careful, either amateurs or deliberately sloppy, sending a message that her privacy could be violated at will. Emma cleared the house room by room, shotgun at the ready. Nothing appeared stolen, but several items had been moved slightly. Photo frames, her father's old desk, kitchen drawers, left fractionally open. In the living room, Emma's trained eye spotted it immediately, a small electronic device attached beneath the coffee table. A listening device, crude but functional. She left it in place, now aware of its presence. Moving methodically through each room, she discovered 3 more, one in the kitchen, one in her bedroom, one in the home office, all left where they could be found by anyone with basic counterintelligence training. Again, the message was clear. We're watching you, and we want you to know it. Emma completed her inspection, then settled at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, deliberately creating normal evening sounds for any listeners. She turned on the radio loud enough to mask other noises, but not suspiciously so. Under this audio cover, she retrieved pen and paper, writing a note to herself. 3 listening devices found, likely more hidden better. Assume all conversations monitored. We'll check out buildings tomorrow. S arriving 7 a.m., potential asset or threat. L arriving within 48 hours. C standing by, plan proceeding. She burned the note in the sink, washing the ashes down the drain. For the benefit of any listeners, she made a phone call to her seed supplier, discussing mundane details about next season's planting schedule. The conversation established her as precisely what she appeared to be, a farmer concerned with ordinary agricultural matters. Later, she took a shower, letting the water run loudly, while she slipped out the bathroom window and made her way to the silo bunker through a route invisible from the main house. Inside the secure room, Emma activated her satellite phone. It's accelerating, she told Liz without greeting. They've bugged the house, made threats at the fair. Sheriff's been warned off. I've got news too, Liz replied. Reynolds was released 3 months ago. Early parole for cooperation with ongoing investigations. Absolute bullshit. He must have connections reaching into the federal system. Can you move any faster? I've arranged a private charter. Should land in Billings by tomorrow evening. What's your status? Preparing defensive measures. Charlie Thompson is assisting. The motorcycle mechanic, can he be trusted? Emma smiled slightly. He's more than a mechanic, and yes, completely. I'll text when I land. Keep your emergency phone close. After ending the call, Emma returned to the weapons cabinet, selecting specific items for the coming confrontation. The Colt 1911 went into a concealed holster, the Remington shotgun positioned strategically near the back door. Additional weapons were distributed throughout the property, hidden but accessible. As midnight approached, Emma completed her preparations. Tomorrow would bring Sophia's visit and potential intelligence. The day after would bring Liz. And sometime in between, she suspected Sterling would make his move. Reynolds would be more patient, staying in the background until the preliminary work was complete. His revenge would be personal. He would want to witness her downfall firsthand. Emma settled into bed, fully clothed, the Colt within arm's reach. Sleep would be brief tonight, 90-minute cycles to maintain alertness without sacrificing mental acuity. As her consciousness drifted towards sleep, Emma's thoughts turned once again to her father. Judge James Harper had faced similar threats throughout his career, never bending, never compromising his principles despite the danger. "They're coming, Dad," she whispered into the darkness. "But they don't know who they're dealing with." Outside, an owl called into the Montana night. Storm clouds gathered on the distant horizon, obscuring the stars one by one. Dawn painted the eastern sky in watercolor hues of pink and gold as Emma completed her perimeter check of the property. She'd been awake since 4 a.m. methodically searching outbuildings for additional surveillance devices. The barn contained two, the workshop, another, all positioned conspicuously meant to be found. She left them in place. Let Sterling's people think they held the advantage of information. At precisely 7 a.m., a modest rental car appeared at the end of her long driveway. Emma positioned herself on the porch, the Colt 1911 concealed beneath her flannel shirt, a mug of coffee in her hand, projecting casual confidence. Sophia Klein drove slowly her urban sedan, looking out of place against the backdrop of rolling Montana farmland. She parked near the house rather than pulling directly into the yard, keeping her vehicle pointed toward the exit. Not her first rodeo, Emma noted. "Beautiful morning," Emma called out, maintaining her farmer persona as Sophia approached. "Coffee? That would be lovely," Sophia replied, her voice carrying easily across the yard. Emma led her guest inside, moving with deliberate casualness past one of the listening devices. In the kitchen, she filled a second mug before gesturing toward the back door. "The view from the south pasture is spectacular this time of morning. Let's take our coffee outside." They walked in silence until reaching a wooden bench positioned near the creek that bisected Emma's property. Out of range of the house, surveillance with running water providing additional audio cover, Emma finally turned to face her visitor. "You've got about 2 minutes to convince me you're not working for Sterling." Sophia set her untouched coffee on the bench. "I'm Special Agent Sophia Klein, Drug Enforcement Administration. I've been undercover with Sterling's organization for 11 months. Emma's expression remained neutral. "Prove it." Sophia reached slowly into her boot, extracting a small leather case. Inside lay a DEA badge and identification. "That proves you have DEA credentials," Emma countered. "Not that you're still working for them, rather than Sterling." A small smile touched Sophia's lips. "You were FBI, weren't you? The thoroughness gives you away." She reached into her pocket, producing a small digital recorder. "Audio verification protocol, Delta 7 Echo, date stamp September 21st, 2025. Field Agent Klein reporting from Operation Viper's Nest." The recorder played a brief exchange between Sophia and her handler, confirmation codes, operational updates, and a specific mention of the Harper property situation. Emma studied the other woman carefully. "If you're DEA, why are you telling me this? You're compromising your operation." "Because the operation is already compromised." Sophia glanced toward the distant tree line. "Reynolds wasn't supposed to be involved. Sterling was my target. His real estate operations are fronts for money laundering across 3 states. But 3 days ago, Reynolds arrived unexpectedly. Sterling answers to him now. And that changes things, how? Reynolds is unstable, vindictive. My orders were to observe and report, but he's accelerating the timeline. Sterling was supposed to acquire properties, legally establish businesses, then gradually implement the laundering operation. Reynolds wants immediate results, and he's fixated on your farm specifically." Emma processed this information, weighing it against her own intelligence. "The creek that runs through my property," she said finally, "it connects to Forest Service roads that provide direct access to the interstate without passing through town or major checkpoints." Sophia nodded. "Perfect for moving product, but there's more. Reynolds recognized your name immediately. This isn't just business for him, it's personal." "I know," Emma's voice hardened. "I'm the agent who put him away 15 years ago." "Not just that," Sophia hesitated. "He believes your father was responsible for his wife's suicide while he was in prison. He's not here just for land, he's here for revenge." Emma absorbed this new information, her tactician's mind recalibrating. "When is he planning to move?" "Tomorrow night, after the fair closes. Sterling's men will create a distraction in town while another team comes for your property." Sophia checked her watch. "I need to get back before they notice I'm gone. I told Sterling I was meeting a local real estate contact who might help pressure you into selling." Emma stood. "One last question. Why help me? You could maintain your cover, complete your operation after they deal with me." Sophia's professional demeanor cracked slightly. "Because I've seen what happens to people who get in Reynolds' way. And because this stopped being just an operation when he put a 5-year-old's photograph on his planning table yesterday. A child who's Sheriff Dawson's granddaughter. Insurance, Reynolds called it. to make sure local law enforcement stays out of his way. Emma's expression darkened. You've done the right thing, Agent Klein. Sophia, she corrected. If we're going to work together, we should be on a first-name basis. As they walked back toward the house, Emma made a decision. Be at Charlie Thompson's garage tonight at 9 p.m. Back entrance, there are people you need to meet. After Sophia departed, Emma waited 30 minutes before retrieving her satellite phone from its hiding place. She needed to update Liz on these new developments, particularly the threat to Dawson's family. The response was immediate. Liz would arrive by nightfall, Charlie's garage transformed after hours. The front remained dark, but the large workshop in back hummed with activity. 4 motorcycles in various stages of restoration occupied the main floor, surrounded by specialized tools and equipment. A separate room behind the shop served as Charlie's private office, and apparently, as Emma now discovered, the local headquarters of the Thundering Eagles. The walls displayed photographs spanning decades young men in military uniforms, gradually aging into the veterans they'd become. Patches, flags, and memorabilia from various service branches created a tapestry of honor and remembrance. In the center, a large wooden table dominated the space, clearly meant for planning rather than paperwork. By 9:15 p.m., the office contained an unlikely war council. Emma stood at the head of the table with Charlie to her right. Sheriff Dawson occupied a chair near the door, his expression grim since learning about the threat to his granddaughter. Sophia sat opposite Charlie, still in her assistant attire, but with the confident posture of her true profession now evident. Sterling has 25 men total. Sophia was explaining a hand-drawn map of River Valley County spread before them. 5 are former military Derek's team. The rest are hired muscle experienced with weapons but undisciplined. They're currently split between the River Hotel and this hunting cabin Reynolds rented 10 miles north of town. Charlie studied the locations. Divided forces, that works in our favor. To a point, Emma countered, they're still overwhelming us numerically, and they'll concentrate their forces for the main operation. Sheriff Dawson leaned forward. I can deputize some locals, men I trust. With respect, Sheriff, Sophia interjected. Reynolds has informants in town. One wrong person gets word of this meeting, we lose our only advantage, surprise. Charlie cleared his throat. We don't have to rely just on locals. He placed a leather-bound ledger on the table. Thundering Eagles, 98 riders beside myself, all veterans, all reliable. Emma exchanged glances with Sophia. Can they mobilize by tomorrow night? 30 are within 2 hours' ride. The rest can make it by late afternoon if I send the word tonight. Dawson looked skeptical. No offense, Charlie, but a bunch of aging bikers against professional criminals with military training. Charlie smiled thinly. Those aging bikers include 2 former Green Berets, a dozen Marines, 15 Army Rangers, ex-SWAT officers from 3 different states, and a surprising number of federal agents who found motorcycle therapy after retirement. He tapped the ledger. We're not just a social club, Jack. Before Dawson could respond, the back door opened. Elizabeth Harper entered, removing sunglasses despite the late hour. At 45, Liz mirrored her twin's features, but where Emma radiated earthy pragmatism, Liz carried the polished sheen of federal authority. Her dark pantsuit and precision-cut blonde hair marked her as clearly as any uniform. Sorry I'm late, she announced, setting a slim briefcase on the table. Had to make sure I wasn't followed from the airport. Emma embraced her sister briefly. Everyone, this is my sister, Elizabeth Harper, FBI. Retired FBI. Liz corrected, extending her hand to Charlie. As of 3 hours ago, I tendered my resignation rather than explain why I needed emergency leave. She turned to Sophia. Agent Klein, your handler sends regards. I spoke with the DEA field office in Denver during my layover. Sophia straightened. They've authorized intervention. Not exactly. Liz's expression tightened. Reynolds has protection, high-level political connections through his cooperation with other federal cases. The Bureau and DEA are maintaining official distance until more evidence is secured. So we're on our own, Emma concluded. Officially, yes. Liz opened her briefcase. Unofficially, I have access codes for federal databases, satellite surveillance capabilities, and enough friends still active to ensure that proper authorities will arrive after we've handled the immediate threat. Sheriff Dawson stood abruptly. This is insane. We're talking about taking on a criminal organization without official backup. I should be calling in the state police, not sitting here planning vigilante action. And risk your granddaughter, Emma challenged quietly. Dawson's face paled. How did you— Reynolds placed her photo on his planning table, Sophia confirmed. He's prepared to target families if law enforcement interferes. The sheriff sank back into his chair, suddenly looking every one of his 68 years. Amy's only 5, which is why conventional law enforcement response is off the table, Emma continued gently. We need to handle this ourselves, Jack. Protect the town, neutralize the threat, and secure enough evidence for federal prosecution, all without tipping our hand. Silence fell across the room as the magnitude of their task settled over them. Finally, Charlie spoke. I've been in this town 30 years, built my business here. Watched families grow, kids graduate, same as you, Jack. If Reynolds establishes a foothold in River Valley, everything changes. Drugs, violence, corruption. We lose the community we've built. Dawson nodded slowly. What's the plan? All eyes turned to Emma. The farmer had vanished completely, now replaced by the tactical specialist who had once coordinated multi-agency operations against targets just like Reynolds. We have 3 objectives. She began, assuming command naturally. Protect vulnerable civilians, especially families. Secure evidence of criminal conspiracy. Neutralize Reynolds' operation without collateral damage. She turned to Charlie. How quickly can your eagles assemble without attracting attention? Charlie considered. The fairgrounds campsite. Eagles come from all over for the county fair every year. Nobody would question bikers camping there, especially with the demolition derby tomorrow night. Perfect cover, Emma agreed. Sophia, what's Sterling's schedule tomorrow? Final day of the fair. He plans to attend the closing ceremonies as part of his community-minded businessman image. Reynolds will remain at the hunting cabin until it's time to move on the farm. They expect minimal resistance, just you alone. Emma smiled coldly. Then we'll give them a surprise. She outlined her strategy with military precision, assigning roles based on each person's skills and resources. The plan took shape over the next 2 hours, a careful choreography of timing, positioning, and contingencies. By midnight, the unlikely alliance had formed a battle plan that leveraged their intimate knowledge of local terrain against Reynolds' superior numbers. As the meeting concluded, Charlie pulled Emma aside. There's something else you should know. His voice dropped to ensure privacy. After you left last night, I did some digging into your father's death. Emma tensed. What about it? Medical examiner who signed off on natural causes retired to Florida the next month. Bought a condo cash despite having substantial debt the year before. You think Reynolds had him killed? It wasn't a question. I think a federal judge who sent Reynolds away suddenly dying of a heart attack 3 months after Reynolds started appealing his case deserves another look. Emma absorbed this information, another piece of the puzzle falling into place. Thank you, Charlie. One more debt to settle. Outside, the Montana night spread star-filled and vast above them. Emma and Liz lingered in the parking lot after the others departed. Just like old times, Liz observed, studying her sister's face in the moonlight. Though we usually had a bit more institutional support. We managed with less in Chicago back in '93. We were younger then. Emma smiled slightly, but smarter now. Liz hesitated. Are you sure about trusting the biker club? We don't know these men. Charlie knows them, that's enough for me. Emma gazed toward the distant mountains. Besides, some fights require a certain kind of warrior. Men who understand that rules sometimes need to be bent to serve justice. The kind of men like Dad's friends, Liz acknowledged. The old guard. Exactly. As they parted ways, Liz to a motel on the edge of town, Emma made back to her farm. Neither sister spoke the truth hovering between them. Tomorrow would bring violence, no matter how carefully they planned. Reynolds would not surrender quietly. Blood would be shed. The only question was whose. Morning broke clear and cool over the fairgrounds, perfect weather for the final day of River Valley County Fair. By 10 o'clock, the parking areas overflowed with vehicles from surrounding communities. Families streamed through the entrance, eager to enjoy the last day of rides, exhibitions, and festivities. Among them walked Emma Harper, presenting the image of a local farmer participating in community traditions. She wore jeans, boots, and a fresh plaid shirt, her prize-winning ribbons pinned to her lapel. Only the slight bulge beneath her denim jacket hinted at the Colt secured in a shoulder holster. Her practiced eye noted changes from previous days. Sterling's men had increased their presence, at least 8 visible now, positioned at key locations throughout the fairground. They maintained communication via discreet earpieces, their attention fixed more on the crowd than the festivities. Emma casually passed the livestock pavilion, where Monarch had already taken his final blue ribbon in the morning competition. Charlie Thompson stood nearby, seemingly occupied with adjusting the vintage Indian motorcycle on display for the afternoon parade. They exchanged no greeting, their roles in today's performance requiring distance. But Emma noted with satisfaction the increased presence of leather-vested men throughout the fair. Thundering eagles arriving individually or in pairs, blending with the fair crowd, while positioning themselves according to plan. Sheriff Dawson maintained his official presence near the main entrance, his deputy quietly evacuating selected families, those with connections to law enforcement or local government, under the guise of a school function in neighboring Clearwater County. Ms. Harper, the voice carried across the fairground midway. Sterling approached immaculately dressed despite the casual setting, his smile never reaching his cold eyes. I trust you've reconsidered my generous offer. Emma matched his artificial smile. Mr. Sterling, enjoying the fair. Charming local customs. He gestured dismissively at the surroundings. Though I imagine such entertainments grow tiresome after a lifetime in such limited surroundings. Some find depth where others see only limitation. Emma maintained eye contact, refusing to be intimidated. I understand you're expecting my decision today? Indeed. $3 million is my final offer. The paperwork is prepared, requiring only your signature. Sterling's tone hardened slightly. I strongly advise acceptance. The alternatives would be unfortunate for everyone. I'll have my answer for you at the closing ceremony, Emma replied. 5 o'clock, main pavilion. Sterling studied her face, searching for signs of fear or deception. Finding neither, he nodded curtly. 5 o'clock. He turned to leave, then paused. A word of friendly advice, Ms. Harper. Don't make this difficult. Some matters extend beyond business into personal territory, dangerous territory. I appreciate your concern, Emma replied evenly, but I've never been one to take the easy path when the right one lies elsewhere. As Sterling disappeared into the crowd, Emma felt the weight of what was to come. The next 8 hours would determine not just her fate, but that of River Valley County itself. She continued her circuit of the fairgrounds, making casual conversation with locals, while mentally noting the positions of Eagle members now scattered throughout the venue. 35 by her count, with more arriving hourly, their motorcycles gradually filling the designated camping area beyond the fairground proper. At noon, Emma participated in the equestrian parade, leading Monarch through choreographed maneuvers alongside other prize-winning horses. The crowd applauded appreciatively, children pointing at the magnificent animals, parents capturing photographs and videos. From her elevated position on horseback, Emma spotted Derek and another of Sterling's men, watching from beside the food vendors, their predatory focus contrasting sharply with the celebratory atmosphere surrounding them. After returning Monarch to his stall, Emma made her way to the fairground office, a small administrative building near the main entrance. Inside, Liz had established their makeshift command center, using her federal credentials to secure private space under the guise of agricultural compliance inspection. Status? Emma asked as she entered the small back office. Liz looked up from the laptop displaying satellite imagery of the surrounding area. Charlie reports 58 Eagles now on site, with another 30 expected within the hour. Sterling's men have established a perimeter here, and here. She pointed to locations on the digital map. They're maintaining radio silence, but body language suggests they're preparing for action. And Reynolds, still at the hunting cabin according to Sophia's last update, 6 men with him, heavily armed. Emma studied the satellite feed. They're splitting forces exactly as we predicted. Sterling handles the public confrontation while Reynolds prepares to move on the farm once I'm occupied here. Or eliminated, Liz added grimly. Diversion teams in place. Liz nodded. Sheriff Dawson has positioned trusted deputies near the elementary school without revealing the full situation. Charlie's veterans have established fallback positions here and here. Her finger traced routes on the digital map. Sophia maintains her cover with Sterling, but has emergency extraction protocols in place. Emma checked her watch. 3 hours until the closing ceremony. Reynolds will likely move on the farm shortly after, using the crowd dispersal as cover for their main operation. Are we really going to let them take the farm? Liz questioned. All your preparations there are exactly what Reynolds expects to find, Emma finished, but not what he'll actually encounter. A knock at the door interrupted them. Charlie entered, closing it quickly behind him. Final count, he reported without preamble. 92 Eagles on site or en route. 7 couldn't make it, family emergencies, health issues. 92 is more than we hoped for, Emma acknowledged. Charlie nodded. These men have been waiting years for a mission that matters, protecting a community against organized crime. That's why most of them wore the uniform in the first place. Any problems with Sterling's surveillance? None. They're watching you, not us. To them, we're just old men on motorcycles enjoying the fair. Charlie's weathered face creased in a smile. Amazing how invisible you become once your hair turns gray. People see the age, not the training beneath it. Their mistake, Liz commented. One of many, Emma agreed. Is everyone clear on the signal? Charlie tapped his vest pocket where a small radio transmitter waited. 3 clicks when Sterling confronts you at the pavilion. 2 more when Reynolds' team reaches the farm perimeter. And the farm itself, prepared exactly as you specified. Charlie's expression turned serious. Emma, about the final phase, are you certain about facing Reynolds personally? I'm certain, she interrupted firmly. This ends where it began with Reynolds and me. Full circle. Charlie exchanged glances with Liz, both recognizing the steel beneath Emma's calm exterior. Neither argued further. As they finalized details, tension mounted across the fairgrounds. Sterling's men moved via with increasing purpose, their casual pretense gradually giving way to tactical positioning. Eagle members likewise adjusted their locations, maintaining the appearance of fair attendees while establishing strategic coverage of key areas. At 4 o'clock, the fair's public address system announced the approaching closing ceremony. Crowds began gravitating toward the main pavilion, where local officials would deliver speeches, present final awards, and officially conclude the 3-day event. Emma returned to the livestock area, spending a few moments with Monarch. The magnificent horse sensed her tension, nudging her shoulder gently with his muzzle. We've been through worse, haven't we, old friend? She murmured, stroking his neck. Though not by much. Nearby, a young stable hand approached. Ms. Harper, Sheriff Dawson asked me to give you this. He handed her a folded note before hurrying away. Emma opened it cautiously. Reynolds on move. 6 vehicles heading toward farm, earlier than expected. Proceed with caution. She tucked the note into her pocket, recalculating. Reynolds had accelerated the timeline, moving before the confrontation with Sterling rather than after. Adaptation would be required. Emma reached for her concealed phone, sending a prearranged text message. Weather front advancing. Thunder expected. The response came immediately. Lightning ready. 5 minutes to 5. Emma made her way toward the main pavilion. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the fairgrounds as hundreds of attendees gathered for the closing ceremony. On stage, the mayor and fair committee arranged themselves for the final presentations. Sterling waited near the steps leading to the platform, Sophia at his side, maintaining her assistant persona. Derek and 3 other men positioned themselves at the pavilion's corners, covering exits, Emma noted. Ms. Harper, Sterling greeted as she approached. Your decision. Emma met his gaze steadily. The farm is not for sale, Mr. Sterling. Not now, not ever. His artificial smile vanished. I'm disappointed. After our discussion about potential consequences, I'd hoped for a more reasonable approach. I'm a reasonable woman, Emma replied, which is why I'm giving you this opportunity to leave River Valley County peacefully. Take your men and go. Sterling's laugh held no humor. An ultimatum from a woman standing alone against my organization. Perhaps you've spent too much time in the sun, Miss Harper. Who said I'm alone? As if on cue, the distant rumble of motorcycle engines cut through the ambient fair noise. Sterling's expression faltered momentarily as he glanced toward the sound. A theatrical touch, he recovered quickly. But ultimately meaningless. Your property will be under new management by morning one way or another. Emma stepped closer, her voice dropping to ensure only Sterling could hear. Mason Reynolds sent you, didn't he? To prepare the way. Tell me, did he mention who I really am? Did he tell you what happened in Chicago 15 years ago? Uncertainty flickered across Sterling's features. You're just a farmer. Am I? Emma's smile turned predatory. Ask yourself why Reynolds wants my land specifically. Ask yourself why he's willing to risk exposure for this particular property. Before Sterling could respond, Emma pressed the transmitter in her pocket 3 times in rapid succession. Throughout the fairground, eagles received the signal on discrete receivers, Charlie's handiwork. "Enjoy the ceremony, Mr. Sterling," Emma concluded, turning toward the stage. "It will be memorable." As Emma climbed the steps to join the closing presentations, Sterling remained frozen doubt, visibly eroding his confidence. He pressed his earpiece, murmuring urgently to his security team. Too late. The plan was in motion. 5 miles away at Harper Farm, 6 black SUVs approached along the main access road. Inside the lead vehicle, Mason, the Reaper Reynolds, surveyed the property through binoculars. At 65, Reynolds retained the cold calculation that had built his criminal empire decades earlier. Prison had aged him physically, deepening the lines around his eyes, whitening his close-cropped hair, but his capacity for violence remained undiminished. "Perimeter looks clear," reported his driver. "No movement at the main house or outbuildings." Reynolds lowered the binoculars. "The woman is at the fair exactly as planned. Sterling will keep her occupied until we secure the property and find the documents." "Sir, about those documents, are we certain they exist after 15 years? Reynolds fixed his subordinate with a glacial stare. Judge Harper was meticulous. Before his unfortunate heart attack, he compiled evidence against my entire operation, evidence that disappeared after his death. His daughter returned to this farm immediately afterward." His fingers tightened on the binoculars. "The documents are here, Titsun. Find them and we eliminate the last threat to our expansion." The convoy proceeded down the dirt driveway, dust billowing behind their vehicles. They passed beneath the wooden arch marking Harper Farm's entrance, approaching the main house with practiced tactical spacing. What they couldn't see were the silent observers tracking their movement through high-powered optics from concealed positions surrounding the property. Nor did they detect the subtle pressure plates buried beneath the gravel road triggered by their passing vehicles. In a concealed command post established within the old grain silo, 3 Thundering Eagles veterans monitored surveillance equipment showing every angle of the approaching threat. One keyed his radio transmitter, 2 clicks. Pause, 2 more clicks. Back at the fairgrounds, Charlie received the signal. Reynolds had taken the bait. The closing ceremony proceeded with artificial normality on the main stage. Emma accepted a final ribbon for her agricultural entries, smiling for photographs while maintaining awareness of Sterling's men now converging around the pavilion's perimeter. From her position on stage, Emma could see Charlie's subtle nod from the crowd. The farm team had confirmed Reynolds' arrival. Time for Phase 2. As the mayor delivered his closing remarks, a commotion erupted at the back of the gathered crowd. 2 Thundering Eagles members, following the established plan, engaged in a staged argument that quickly escalated to shoving. Sheriff Dawson moved to intervene, drawing the attention of Sterling's security team. In that moment of distraction, 30 Eagles shifted positions, simultaneously establishing control of key exits and sightlines throughout the pavilion area. Sterling sensed the changing dynamics, his expression hardening as he scanned the crowd. His hand moved toward his jacket, where Emma knew he carried a concealed weapon. Before he could act, Charlie Thompson appeared beside him, pressing something against Sterling's ribs beneath his suit jacket. "Federal agents have this entire fair under surveillance." Charlie murmured, the threat in his voice unmistakable despite his conversational tone. "Make a scene and you'll spend the rest of your life in a cell much smaller than the one Reynolds enjoyed." Sterling froze, his calculating mind visibly reassessing the situation. "You're bluffing. You're just the local mechanic." Charlie pressed the concealed weapon more firmly against Sterling's side. 22 years force recon before I became a local mechanic. Want to test how much I remember?" On stage, Emma concluded her brief acceptance speech and descended the steps, moving purposefully through the crowd towards Sterling and Charlie. Sophia followed, maintaining her cover while positioning herself to intervene if necessary. "Mr. Sterling," Emma addressed him calmly, "I believe you and I have matters to discuss privately. Shall we step away from these good people?" Sterling's eyes darted between Emma, Charlie, and the increasingly noticeable presence of leather-vested men throughout the pavilion. "What is this?" "This," Emma replied softly, "is what happens when you threaten the wrong community." She gestured toward a small building behind the pavilion. "After you." Flanked by Charlie and 2 other Eagles, Sterling had little choice but to comply. Once inside the empty administrative office, Emma locked the door behind them. "Your men are currently being contained by federal agents and local law enforcement," she informed him, a necessary exaggeration of their actual circumstances. Reynolds is walking into a trap at my farm. Your operation is finished, Mr. Sterling. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Sterling snarled, desperation replacing his usual composure. Reynolds has connections that can make people disappear. Judges, witnesses, entire families. Like Judge James Harper, Emma challenged. My father, comprehension dawned in Sterling's eyes. You're not just the daughter, you're the agent, the one from Chicago. Special Agent Emma Harper, FBI. She confirmed, though the title no longer applied officially. Reynolds killed my father to silence him. Now he's back to eliminate the remaining evidence secured at my farm. Sterling's shoulders slumped as he recognized the depth of his miscalculation. Reynolds never mentioned who you really were. He said it was just a land acquisition with potential resistance from a stubborn local. And you never questioned why this particular property warranted such attention, why a man of Reynolds' stature would personally oversee a simple real estate transaction. Before Sterling could respond, Charlie's radio crackled. Package secured at the nest. Repeat, package secured. Emma exchanged glances with Charlie. The farm team had captured Reynolds. Looks like your boss just walked into federal custody, she informed Sterling. I suggest you start considering cooperation options. First one to turn the state's evidence usually gets the best deal. As the implications settled over him, Sterling's facade crumbled completely. Reynolds will kill me if I talk. Reynolds will spend the rest of his life in a supermax facility, Emma countered, but only if we secure enough evidence for federal prosecution. Your testimony could make the difference. Sterling's calculating mind worked visibly behind his eyes, weighing options, assessing scenarios. The documents Reynolds is looking for, they really exist. Yes. Emma watched him carefully. Evidence of judicial tampering, witness intimidation, and 2 murders including my father's. Enough to ensure Reynolds never breathes free air again. And in exchange for my cooperation, witness protection, reduced charges focusing on financial crimes rather than violent offenses. Emma leaned forward. But my offer expires in 30 seconds. After that, you face the full weight of federal prosecution as Reynolds' right hand. Sterling required only 10 of those seconds to make his decision. Outside, the fair's closing ceremony concluded with a modest fireworks display. Families gathered their belongings, children clutched souvenirs, and vendors began dismantling booths. None recognized the quiet law enforcement operation unfolding in their midst as Sterling's men were systematically isolated and detained. Eagle members maintained their positions throughout the fairgrounds, ensuring the public remained unaware of the potential danger neutralized around them. Sheriff Dawson coordinated with his deputies, securing detainees and vehicles parked discreetly behind the maintenance buildings. Only one piece remained in play, Mason Reynolds himself, now reportedly in custody at Harper Farm. But Emma knew better than to celebrate prematurely. Reynolds had eluded justice before through connections and cunning. Until she confirmed his capture personally, the mission remained active. I need to get to the farm, she told Charlie as they secured Sterling and Sheriff Dawson's vehicle. Not alone, Liz interjected, approaching from the crowd. Reynolds is too dangerous. We go together. Emma recognized the determination in her twin's expression, the same stubborn resolve they'd inherited from their father. Just like Chicago. Just like Chicago, Liz confirmed. Partners to the end. Charlie joined them, keys to his Harley already in hand. I'm coming too. My men secured him, but Reynolds isn't just any prisoner. He's the kind who always has one more card to play. Emma nodded, accepting their support. 3-pronged approach then. Liz and I will take the main road. Charlie circle around through the north pasture. Sheriff Dawson maintains control here with the Eagles. As they moved toward their vehicles, Sophia appeared, her cover now unnecessary with Sterling in custody. Room for one more. DEA has questions for Reynolds. 4 points of containment, Emma adjusted smoothly. Even better. The sun hung low on the western horizon as they departed the fairgrounds, casting long shadows across the landscape. Emma drove her truck with Liz beside her, thoughts turning toward the final confrontation waiting at the farm. Reynolds had haunted her family for 15 years, first as a defendant in her father's courtroom, then as the suspected architect of his death, and now as a direct threat to everything she'd built in River Valley. Today, that haunting would end one way or another. Twilight painted the Montana sky in deepening shades of purple and crimson as Emma's truck approached Harper Farm. The property appeared unnaturally still, no lights visible in the main house or outbuildings, despite the gathering darkness. Emma slowed at the entrance, noting fresh tire tracks cutting deep into the gravel driveway. Reynolds's convoy had arrived as expected. What remained unclear was whether the trap had functioned as planned. "Something's wrong," she murmured, instinct prickling at the back of her neck. Liz reached for her service weapon. "What do you see? Not enough activity." Emma pointed toward the barn. The Eagles should have established visible security by now. Standard protocol after capturing high-value targets. She keyed the radio Charlie had provided. "Nest to lookout. Status report." Silence answered, not even static. "Communications compromised," Liz concluded grimly. "Reynolds may have brought signal jammers." Emma turned off the truck's headlights, proceeding by moonlight alone. "Change of approach. We'll circle through the south pasture, use the tree line for cover." They abandoned the vehicle behind a rise that concealed them from the main buildings. Armed with their sidearms and the tactical knowledge accumulated through years of federal service, the Harper twins advanced through familiar terrain, moving as the synchronized unit they'd been during their FBI years. The night air carried unusual stillness, no cricket sounds, no rustling wildlife. Even the horses in the distant paddock stood motionless, sensing the wrongness permeating their environment. Emma led them along a shallow creek bed that provided both cover and sound masking for their movement. As they approached the main compound, evidence of conflict became apparent, a vehicle door standing open, boot prints showing signs of struggle in the soft earth. "Ambush," Liz whispered. "They were waiting for the Eagles." Emma nodded grimly. Her diversionary plan had worked too well, drawing the Eagles into a trap rather than the reverse. Reynolds had anticipated resistance, prepared accordingly. Near the main barn, they discovered the first casualty, an Eagle member lying unconscious, zip-tied and gagged. Alive, but evidence that Reynolds had maintained tactical advantage. Emma checked the man's pulse, strong and steady. "Non-lethal takedown. They're keeping prisoners." "Hostages," Liz corrected darkly. "Leverage." They continued their approach, documenting similar scenes around the property perimeter. Eagles neutralized, efficiently secured but unharmed. Reynolds was containing potential witnesses rather than eliminating them. Unusual restraint for a man known for ruthless violence. "He still thinks he's walking away from this," Emma realized. "He's preserving deniability, maintaining the appearance of legitimate business in case his political connections need to intervene." The main house loomed ahead, dark except for a single light visible through the kitchen window. Movement shadowed the illuminated glass figures, passing back and forth in what appeared to be systematic search patterns. "They're looking for the documents," Liz whispered, "which they won't find." Emma permitted herself a grim smile. "Not where they're searching." A soft whistle from the darkness behind them triggered immediate defensive postures, weapons raised toward the sound. Charlie emerged from Shadowfinger to his lips, gesturing them to follow. He led them to the equipment shed, where a concealed entrance revealed a root cellar Emma had converted years earlier into an emergency communications center. Inside, 3 Eagles monitored surveillance equipment, showing feeds from cameras hidden throughout the property. "Reynolds brought jammers," Charlie confirmed in hushed tones. "Blocked our radio communications before we could alert you. They've got 17 of my men secured in the barn. 4 more managed to retreat to fallback positions." "And Reynolds?" Emma asked. "Main house, directing the search personally." Charlie pointed to a monitor showing the kitchen, where Reynolds supervised his men tearing apart furniture, removing floorboards, and dismantling cabinets. "Casualties?" "None so far. They used tranquilizer rounds, military grade. Professional takedown." Emma studied the surveillance feeds, cataloging enemy positions, equipment, and vulnerabilities. "Where's Sophia?" She was approaching from the east access road. "No visual confirmation yet," Charlie admitted. "Could be maintaining cover or compromise," Liz finished. Emma's tactical mind processed the evolving situation, formulating revised approaches based on new intelligence. "Reynolds has maintained non-lethal protocols so far, which means he's still concerned about legal exposure. That's our leverage." "Against 17 hostages," Liz challenged. "Against his freedom." Emma indicated the surveillance equipment. "Every movement since they arrived has been recorded, evidence admissible in federal court. Add to that the documents he's searching for, Which aren't in the house at all, Charlie concluded, understanding dawning. You moved them, Emma nodded. The originals are in a safety deposit box in Billings. Copies are with 3 separate attorneys to be released in the event of my death or disappearance. Insurance policy, Liz approved, but Reynolds doesn't know that, which gives us negotiating room. Emma studied the monitors. We need to isolate Reynolds from his support team. Force direct confrontation under controlled circumstances. Charlie indicated a particular screen. Southfield camera just picked up movement. It's Sophia, and she's not alone. The monitor showed Sophia advancing through tall grass, accompanied by 4 figures in tactical gear, weapons at ready moving, with professional discipline. DEA tactical team, Liz identified. She brought backup. Changes the dynamic, Emma acknowledged, but increases risk to hostages if Reynolds feels cornered. She turned to Charlie. Can your remaining men create a diversion at the north perimeter? Draw attention away from Sophia's approach. Charlie nodded, reaching for the secure radio linked to their fallback positions. On your signal. Emma checked her weapon, then outlined her plan with concise precision. Charlie's team creates diversion at north perimeter. Sophia's DEA team secures the barn and frees hostages. Liz coordinates between teams from this position. I'll confront Reynolds directly. Alone, Liz protested. That's not the protocol we established. Reynolds wants me, Emma stated flatly. Has for 15 years. This ends between us the way it began in Chicago. Before further objections could be raised, Emma detailed specific positions, timing, and contingencies. Despite their concerns, both Liz and Charlie recognized the tactical soundness of her approach and the personal necessity driving her decision. 20 minutes, Emma concluded. Synchronize watches and move to positions. Radio silence until first diversion. As the others prepared, Emma turned to her sister one last time. If this goes sideways, it won't, Liz interrupted firmly. Emma continued anyway. If it does, the evidence is in box 437 at First Montana Bank in Billings. Accounts under Martha Washington. Liz clasped her sister's hand briefly. See you on the other side of this? Count on it. Emma departed through the concealed entrance, disappearing into the Montana darkness, to confront the man who had haunted her family for 15 years. The circle that began in a Chicago warehouse would close tonight one way or another. Inside the main house, Mason the Reaper Reynolds grew increasingly frustrated as his methodical search yielded nothing. The documents that could destroy him evidence, compiled by Judge Harper before his engineered heart attack, remained elusive despite hours of searching. Sir, one of his men approached cautiously. We've gone through every room, checked all the hiding places you specified. Nothing. Reynolds stared out the kitchen window at the silent farm buildings. She moved them. The question is where? Maybe they don't exist, another man suggested. 15 years is a long time to hold on to. They exist. Reynolds cut him off sharply. And they're here somewhere. Judge Harper was methodical. His daughter shares that trait. A sudden explosion from the northern property line interrupted their discussion, a vehicle in flames illuminating the night sky with orange fury. Diversion, Reynolds recognized immediately. They're trying to draw us out. He turned to his lieutenant. Take 4 men to investigate. The rest continue searching the outbuildings. As his men departed to follow orders, Reynolds remained in the kitchen alone for the first time since arriving. His instincts honed through decades of criminal enterprise sensed the trap closing around him rather than his intended target. Hello, Mason. The voice from the darkened hallway carried no fear, only cold recognition. Reynolds turned slowly to face Emma Harper standing in the doorway, her weapon aimed steadily at his chest. Agent Harper, he acknowledged, his tone almost conversational. Or is it just Ms. Harper these days? I understand you left federal service after Chicago. After you killed my father, Emma corrected, advancing into the kitchen with measured steps. Reynolds spread his hands in a gesture of innocence. Heart attack. Tragic but natural causes, according to the medical examiner. The same examiner who mysteriously acquired a Florida condo immediately afterward. A thin smile crossed Reynolds' face. Coincidence. There are no coincidences with you, Mason, only calculations. Emma maintained perfect aim despite the conversation. 15 years of planning your revenge, cultivating political connections for early release, setting up Sterling as your front man, all to find documents you believe threaten your freedom. Documents you are going to give me, Reynolds stated with calm certainty. Unless you want your community to suffer, I have resources beyond what you see here, people prepared to make River Valley County a very unpleasant place to live. Those resources are being dismantled as we speak, Emma informed him. Your men at the fair are in custody. Sterling has already agreed to testify against you, and your team here is currently being neutralized by federal agents. Something flickered in Reynolds' cold eyes, the first hint of doubt. You're bluffing. Am I? Emma nodded toward the window where flashes of light and movement could be seen near the barn as Sophia's team executed their operation. It's over, Mason. The only question is how you want this to end. Reynolds' hand moved imperceptibly toward his jacket. I've survived worse situations. Not like this one. Emma's aim never wavered. The documents you're searching for, they're not here. They're secured with multiple attorneys with instructions to release everything to federal prosecutors if anything happens to me. Then what's my incentive not to shoot you right now? Reynolds' hand continued its subtle movement. Because killing a former federal agent only guarantees those documents become public immediately. Your political connections won't save you from the evidence my father compiled evidence I've supplemented over 15 years. Reynolds froze, reassessing. What do you want? Justice. Emma's voice hardened. For my father. For everyone your organization has destroyed over the decades. Justice, Reynolds repeated with contempt. Your father spoke about justice too, self-righteous from his bench condemning men like me, while the system he served remained just as corrupt, only with better public relations. My father was a good man. Your father was a hypocrite, Reynolds snarled, mask slipping. Do you know how many judges I bought before him? How many prosecutors? The entire system runs on money and influence. Your father just priced himself too high for my taste. Emma absorbed the implicit confession, her expression unchanging. So you had him killed? I had him removed like any other obstacle. Reynolds' pretense of innocence vanished completely. Just as I'll remove you if necessary. His hand moved in earnest now, reaching for the concealed weapon beneath his jacket. Emma fired first, a single shot that struck his shoulder, spinning him against the kitchen counter. His weapon clattered to the floor as he clutched the bleeding wound. That's for my father, Emma stated calmly, keeping him covered, as approaching footsteps signaled Liz and Sophia's teams converging on the house. This isn't over. Reynolds gasped through pain. You have no idea how far my influence extends. Actually, I do. Emma nodded toward the ceiling corner, where a small camera had recorded their entire conversation. That's why I needed your confession on record. Your political connections can't protect you from your own words, Mason. As federal agents flooded the kitchen, securing Reynolds and reading him his rights, Emma finally lowered her weapon. 15 years of vigilance, preparation, and waiting had culminated in this moment, justice delayed, but finally served. Outside, the Eagles, released from the barn, gathered in the yard, checking each other for injuries while maintaining security perimeters. Charlie approached Emma as she emerged onto the porch, Reynolds being led to a waiting federal transport behind her. Your father would be proud, he said simply. Emma nodded, emotions finally breaking through her professional composure. It's really over. Not quite, Charlie corrected gently. Reynolds' operation is finished, but there's still work to do. Communities to rebuild. Trust to restore. One step at a time, Emma agreed, watching as the last of Reynolds' men were loaded into vehicles. Liz joined them, slipping an arm around her sister's shoulders. What now? Emma gazed across the darkened farm, her home, her heritage, her future. Now we heal, and remember why we fought in the first place. In the distance, thundering eagles, motorcycles rumbled to life, sentinels completing their mission, returning to lives temporarily set aside to protect their community. The night sky above Montana sparkled with stars, witnesses to justice finally served beneath their ancient light. Darkness had fully claimed the Montana sky when a commotion erupted at the edge of Harper Farm. The federal transport vehicle containing Reynolds suddenly veered off the access road, its headlights carving wild arcs through the night as it swerved violently. Ambush! Charlie's voice carried across the yard as muzzle flashes erupted from the tree line. Emma reacted instantly, pushing Liz toward cover behind the porch columns. Years of training resurfaced as she assessed the tactical situation with cold precision. Reynolds' contingency plan was unfolding, a hidden team positioned to intercept prisoner transport and extract their leader. 3 vehicles north boundary, shouted one of the Eagles, who had taken a watch point on the barn roof. Armed personnel deploying. The transport vehicle now lay on its side tires, still spinning in the cool night air. Two DEA agents who had been escorting Reynolds scrambled for cover as automatic weapons fire stitched patterns across the ground near their position. "Charlie, get your men to defensive positions," Emma commanded. "Priority is civilian protection." The old Marine was already in motion, directing Eagles to predetermined fallback points they'd established earlier. Across the property, the veterans responded with disciplined, efficiency men in their 60s, moving with the muscle memory of their military training. Liz activated her emergency transmitter, broadcasting a distress call to federal response teams. "Backup's at least 30 minutes out," she informed Emma grimly. Emma nodded, calculating. Reynolds planned this all along, the capture, the confession, all to draw us into position for his actual escape plan. "And we walked right into it," Liz acknowledged. Inside the overturned transport, Reynolds worked his handcuffed wrists beneath his legs, bringing his bound hands from behind his back to the front of his body. The bullet wound in his shoulder made movement excruciating, but decades of criminal survival instincts overrode the pain. The driver lay unconscious against the crumpled door. Reynolds searched him, quickly locating handcuff keys in the agent's breast pocket. Within moments, he'd freed himself and retrieved the agent's sidearm. Outside, the tactical situation deteriorated rapidly. Reynolds' extraction team, clearly professional military contractors based on their movement patterns, established a suppressive fire perimeter while advancing on the transport. "We can't let Reynolds escape," Emma told Liz and Charlie as they crouched behind Emma's pickup. "If he gets away now, he disappears forever with knowledge of every person involved in his capture." "Making us all targets," Charlie concluded. Sophia crawled toward their position, keeping low as bullets cracked overhead. "My team's pinned down at the barn. These aren't street thugs, they're using coordinated military tactics." "Private contractors," Emma confirmed. "Reynolds' insurance policy." Charlie studied the battlefield with experienced eyes. "They're making a corridor to the transport. Classic extraction approach." He turned to Emma. "We need to close that corridor." Emma nodded. "The old silo bunker, it overlooks their position. If we can reach it, we can disrupt their extraction path." "Too exposed," Liz objected. "They'd see anyone trying to cross that open ground." "Not necessarily." Emma's gaze shifted to the darkened horse paddock. "Monarch." Understanding dawned in Charlie's eyes. "The horse as diversion and transportation." Emma was already moving, staying low as she worked her way toward the stable. "Cover me at my signal." Before anyone could object further, Emma slipped into the shadows, navigating the familiar terrain of her farm with instinctive precision. She reached the stable undetected, finding Monarch alert and nervous from the nearby gunfire. "Easy boy," she soothed quickly, securing a lightweight bridle. No time for a saddle, she'd ride bareback the way she had as a teenager on this very land. Emma led the powerful quarter horse to the stable's rear exit, positioning for maximum cover until the crucial moment. She keyed her radio, once signaling readiness. Immediately, Charlie's voice boomed from multiple positions around the property. "Eagles covering fire, 3, 2, 1, execute." Coordinated gunfire erupted from Eagle positions, forcing Reynolds' extraction team to seek cover. In that crucial moment of distraction, Emma swung onto Monarch's back and urged him forward. The magnificent horse responded instantly, exploding from cover in a powerful surge of muscle and speed. Across open ground, they flew. Emma pressed low against Monarch's neck, presenting the smallest possible target as they streaked toward the silo. Bullets kicked up dirt around them, but Monarch never faltered, his racing heritage carrying them across the exposed terrain in seconds that felt like eternities. They reached the silo's shadow, where Emma dismounted quickly, sending the horse running toward the far paddock with a sharp slap to his flank. She accessed the bunker's hidden entrance, emerging moments later on the silo's reinforced observation platform. From this elevated position, she had clear sight lines to the extraction corridor and the overturned transport, where Reynolds was now visible, attempting to reach the tree line. Emma settled into shooting position, bringing her rifle to bear on the lead extraction vehicle. She controlled her breathing, timing her movements between heartbeats, as she'd been taught long ago. The shot, when it came, shattered the vehicle's engine block with surgical precision. A second shot disabled the trailing vehicle, effectively blocking the extraction corridor from both ends. Reynolds' escape route collapsed in moments, throwing his team into disarray. Through her scope, Emma saw Reynolds' expression shift from confidence to realization. The hunter had become the hunted. Their eyes met across the distance, recognition flowing between them. Below, Charlie capitalized on the tactical advantage, directing Eagles in a flanking maneuver that further destabilized the extraction team. Sophia's DEA agents, no longer pinned down, established a secondary containment perimeter. Reynolds, recognizing his deteriorating position, made a desperate decision. Instead of continuing toward his team, he turned and sprinted toward the old horse barn, the original structure on Harper property, standing since the 1950s. Emma tracked his movement through her scope, but held fire. Reynolds was heading exactly where she wanted him. "Liz," she radioed, "Reynolds is heading for the old barn. Cut off any secondary escape through the north side." "Copy," came her sister's terse reply. Emma descended from the silo position, moving parallel to Reynolds' path while maintaining cover. As gunfire continued between Eagle positions and the extraction team, she circled behind the main confrontation zone, approaching the old barn from its blind side. The structure held particular significance in Harper family history. Built by her grandfather, it had once been the heart of their farming operation before newer facilities were constructed. More importantly, it was where Judge James Harper had spent his final weekend allegedly suffering his fatal heart attack while repairing tack equipment. It was where Emma's father had died murdered on Reynolds' orders. And now, by either cosmic justice or tactical inevitability, it was where this 15-year saga would reach its conclusion. Emma entered silently through a side door, the familiar sense of hay and aged wood filling her nostrils. Moonlight filtered through gaps in the worn siding, creating striped patterns across the dusty interior. Old horse stalls lined one wall, storage compartments another. A hayloft overlooked the central space, accessible by a wooden ladder, now gray with age. Every corner of this space held memories. Here, her father had taught 7-year-old Emma to tie proper knots in riding tack. There, by the eastern wall, they'd nursed a foal back to health during a particularly brutal winter. The workbench still held tools positioned exactly as Judge Harper had left them on his final weekend. She moved with methodical precision, clearing zones, maintaining situational awareness. Reynolds was here. She could sense his presence in the stillness, in the subtle wrongness of shadows. "I know you're here, Mason," her voice carried in the cavernous space. "There's no way out this time." Silence answered her, thick and expectant. "Your extraction team is contained," she continued, moving steadily through the barn. "Federal response units are inbound. Even if you manage to escape tonight, there's nowhere you could hide. The evidence is too substantial." "Evidence can disappear," Reynolds' voice finally responded, echoing slightly from the hayloft above. "Witnesses, too. You should understand that better than most, Agent Harper." "Former agent," she corrected, continuing her careful movement. "Though some skills never fade." "Like killing," Reynolds challenged. "How many men have you put in the ground, Emma? We're not so different, you and I, both willing to take lives when necessary." "The difference is in the necessary," Emma countered, reaching the ladder to the hayloft. "I never killed for profit or revenge." A bitter laugh echoed from above. "No, then what are you doing here in this barn, hunting me? If not revenge for your father, then what?" Emma paused, the question striking deeper than she'd anticipated. The weight of 15 years' vigilance pressed upon her shoulders as memories flooded back her father's laugh, his unwavering principles, the devastation of finding him here in this very barn, his life stolen by Reynolds' machinations. "Justice," she answered finally, "something my father believed in until his last breath." "Justice," Reynolds repeated with contempt. "Your father spoke of justice too, right here in this barn, before the heart attack that wasn't really a heart attack." Emma's grip tightened on her weapon. "So you admit it after 15 years. Why not? We're well beyond legal considerations now." Reynolds' voice carried a strange mix of bitterness and resignation. "Yes, I had your father eliminated. He discovered financial connections that would have unraveled everything I'd built. Principled men like Judge Harper are inconvenient obstacles." "Those documents," Emma pressed, beginning her ascent of the ladder. "What exactly did he find that frightened you so badly?" Silence stretched for several heartbeats before Reynolds answered, his voice lower now. "No. Your father was more thorough than anyone I'd encountered. He traced offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, documented my connections to 3 federal judges, 2 state attorneys general. He found the network of shell companies we used to launder money through children's charities and political campaigns." Reynolds paused. "But most damaging, he uncovered evidence linking me directly to 5 murders in Boston in 1980s. 6. Evidence the FBI never found. Emma reached the hayloft, emerging cautiously into the shadowed upper level. Ancient hay bales created a labyrinth of potential cover. The space smelled of dust and faded summers. He was more than an obstacle, Emma replied, moving carefully between bales. He was a good man, a father, someone who believed the system could work if people stood by their principles. Principles, Reynolds scoffed. Do you know what principles are worth in the real world, Emma? Exactly nothing. Money and power. Those are the only currencies that matter. If that's true, she challenged, moving carefully between bales, why spend 15 years seeking revenge? Why not simply enjoy your money and power? Silence stretched for several heartbeats before Reynolds responded, his voice closer now. Because your father took something from me. Something irreplaceable. Your freedom, Emma suggested, tracking the sound. My son. The unexpected answer momentarily froze Emma in position. My wife couldn't handle the separation, Reynolds continued, his voice carrying genuine pain beneath the coldness. She took her own life 2 years into my sentence. My son blamed me, changed his name, disappeared from my life entirely. And you blamed my father, Emma realized. I blamed the entire Harper family. Reynolds emerged from behind a stack of hay bales, his weapon trained steadily on Emma's position. An eye for an eye, a family for a family. They faced each other across 15 feet of weathered floorboards, weapons aimed, gazes locked. Reynolds' shoulder still bled from Emma's earlier shot, but his hand remained steady. Emma studied the man who had haunted her family for 15 years. In the moonlight filtering through gaps in the barn roof, Reynolds looked older, more vulnerable than she'd imagined during countless nights planning this confrontation. Not the omnipotent criminal mastermind of her nightmares, but a wounded, bitter old man clinging to vengeance as his final purpose. It won't bring them back, Emma said quietly. Killing me won't reunite you with your son. No, Reynolds acknowledged, but it will complete what I started 15 years ago. His eyes narrowed slightly. Do you know what your father said to me right here in this barn before my men gave him the injection that mimicked a heart attack? Emma felt a cold tightness in her chest. What? He said he forgave me. Reynolds' voice carried disbelief even 15 years later. Can you imagine the self-righteous bastard looked me in the eye and said he forgave me for what I was about to do? Something shifted in Emma's perception. Her father's last act had been one of principle, maintaining his moral compasses even in the face of death. Not weakness, but extraordinary strength. That sounds like Dad, she said softly. It was meant to haunt me, Reynolds spat, to make me question myself. Well, it didn't work. 15 years and I never once regretted giving that order. But you never stopped thinking about it either, Emma observed. Otherwise you wouldn't be here. A creaking floorboard behind Reynolds was the only warning before Liz Harper emerged from shadow, her weapon pressed against the base of his skull. Federal agent, she announced coldly. Drop your weapon. Reynolds remained motionless, calculating odds, searching for leverage. Twins, he observed with a grim amusement. I should have remembered that detail from the Chicago operation. Drop it, Liz repeated. Last warning. Or what? You'll shoot an unarmed man, create a martyr. My organization will retaliate against this entire community. Your organization is being dismantled as we speak, Emma informed him, maintaining her aim. Sterling gave up everything, names, accounts, connections. It's finished, Mason. Nothing is ever truly finished, Reynolds replied, but doubt had entered his voice. A sudden explosion from outside rocked the barn, the last desperate gambit of Reynolds' extraction team. The momentary distraction was all Reynolds needed. He dropped and rolled his weapon, discharging toward Emma as Liz fired simultaneously. 2 shots echoed as one in the confined space. Emma felt the burn of a bullet grazing her left arm as she dove for cover. When she regained her position, Reynolds lay motionless on the hayloft floor, Liz standing over him with her weapon still trained on his immobile form. Clear, Liz announced professionally, though her voice carried the slight tremor of aftermath adrenaline. You hit. Graze, Emma confirmed, moving toward them. Nothing serious. They approached Reynolds cautiously. The bullet had struck his chest, the spreading crimson stain telling its own story about survival probabilities. Poetic, Reynolds managed through increasingly labored breathing. To end where it began. Save your strength, Emma directed, already applying pressure to the wound despite everything this man had done. Medical assistance is coming. Always the professional. Reynolds coughed, blood speckling his lips. His gaze shifted between the twin sisters. Your father's daughters, through and through. His breathing grew more labored, eyes beginning to lose focus. The documents, he gasped. Were they ever actually here? Emma met his gaze steadily. No, Dad sent them to us before you killed him. They've been in a safety deposit box in Billings for 15 years with instructions to release everything if anything happened to me. A sound that might have been a laugh escaped Reynolds. Outplayed by the Harpers. One last time. His eyes drifted toward the barn's rafters, focusing on something only he could see. Maria, he whispered, addressing his long-dead wife. I tried. Mason, the Reaper Reynolds, died as he had lived, unrepentant, violent, and ultimately alone. Outside, the sounds of conflict faded as Reynolds' extraction team, learning of their employer's death, surrendered to the combined forces of DEA agents and Eagle veterans. Federal response units arrived minutes later, establishing perimeter control and beginning evidence collection. Emma and Liz remained in the hayloft for several moments, neither speaking, both feeling the weight of finality settling over them. This barn, where their father had died and now Reynolds as well, had completed its role in their family's story. It's really over, Liz finally said, holstering her weapon. Emma nodded, looking around at the space that had held such painful memories for so long. Dad would be proud of you. Of us both, Liz corrected, reaching for her sister's hand. As they descended from the hayloft, Emma paused at the bottom of the ladder, touching a worn wooden post where her father had carved their initials decades earlier. JHEHLH, a family bound by more than blood, bound by principles that had withstood the ultimate test. Dawn painted Harper Farm in gentle gold, erasing the previous night's violence with nature's indifferent beauty. State and federal law enforcement had worked through the night, processing the scene, collecting evidence, and transporting prisoners. Emma sat on her porch steps, cradling a steaming mug of coffee between hands still bearing the residue of gunpowder. Monarch grazed peacefully in the nearby paddock, seemingly unaffected by his role in the previous night's events. Liz emerged from the house, her own coffee in hand, and settled beside her twin on the weathered steps. Just got off the phone with the bureau director. Reynolds' organization is being systematically dismantled across 5 states. Sterling's testimony opened everything: financial records, political connections, the entire network. And the documents, Emma asked, the ones Dad compiled. Being entered as evidence as we speak. 3 federal judges have already resigned, claiming health concerns. A state attorney general announced he won't seek re-election. The congressman from Illinois issued a statement denying everything, but he's already lawyered up. Emma nodded, sipping her coffee. Justice delayed, but not denied. Liz completed the thought. Sheriff Dawson's cruiser appeared on the driveway, dust trailing behind it in the morning light. The sheriff moved stiffly as he approached, his age showing more prominently after the long night. Just left the station, he announced without preamble. Medical examiner's report from 15 years ago is being officially reopened. They'll formally reclassify Dad's death as homicide. The simple statement carried enormous weight. After 15 years, their father would finally receive the truth he deserved. Thank you, Jack, Emma said quietly, for everything. Dawson's weathered features softened. Your father was my best friend, stood as best man at my wedding, godfather to my daughter. He shook his head slowly. 15 years knowing the truth but unable to prove it. That weight's finally lifted. For all of us, Emma agreed. Charlie's truck appeared next, parking alongside the sheriff's cruiser. The old Marine moved with surprising energy despite the sleepless night, carrying a large thermos and a folder tucked under his arm. Morning, he greeted, joining them on the porch. Thought you might need the good stuff. He poured fresh coffee into their mugs from his thermos. Gloria's special blend. Your wife's a saint, Liz commented, accepting the steaming coffee gratefully. Don't I know it? Charlie settled into a chair, placing the folder on the small table between them. DEA finished preliminary analysis of the materials from Reynolds' hunting cabin. Found these. He opened the folder to reveal photographs. Surveillance images of Emma's farm taken over several weeks. Pictures of the fairground, shots of Emma at various locations around town. Reynolds had been watching her long before making his move. He was thorough, Emma observed, studying the images without surprise. She'd always assumed she was being monitored. And desperate, Charlie added. This was personal for him, not just business. We know, Liz said quietly. He lost his family while in prison. Blamed Dad for it. Charlie nodded grimly. Vengeance is a powerful motivator. But ultimately empty, Emma added, thinking of Reynolds' final moments. 15 years of planning, and what did it get him? A grave instead of a legacy, Dawson observed. The conversation paused as a convoy of vehicles appeared on the main road, motorcycles leading a procession of cars and trucks. The Thundering Eagles returning. Emma realized with what appeared to be half the town following behind. They parked in the farmyard, nearly 60 veterans assembling with the unconscious precision of men accustomed to formation. Among them moved townsfolk carrying food tools and supplies. "What's this?" Emma asked Charlie. The old Marine smiled slightly. "Community response. Word spread about what happened last night, not details but enough. These people know you protected them from something significant. They're here to help rebuild." The concept of receiving help rather than providing it felt foreign to Emma, who after 15 years of self-reliance. Yet as River Valley residents approached with offers of assistance, she recognized something she'd been missing: belonging. For years, she had maintained careful distance, protecting these people by keeping her dangerous past separate from their lives. Now that separation had collapsed, replaced by something unexpected: integration. Sophia arrived with the last group, her DEA credentials now displayed openly rather than concealed. She joined the porch gathering, accepting coffee from Liz. "Official update," she began without preamble. "Sterling's testimony is even more valuable than we anticipated. He kept meticulous records of every transaction, every bribe, every political favor. The corruption network spread further than anyone imagined: judges, prosecutors, even 2 senior FBI officials." "Dad would be vindicated," Liz said quietly. "Already is," Sophia confirmed. "The Attorney General issued a formal statement this morning acknowledging Judge Harper's heroic efforts to expose systemic corruption. They're talking about a posthumous commendation." Emma felt a complex wave of emotion: satisfaction at her father's vindication, grief at the years lost, relief at the burden finally lifted. "Better late than never," she said finally. As the morning progressed, Harper Farm transformed from crime scene to community gathering. Eagle members worked alongside townspeople, repairing damage from the previous night's conflict. Women from the church auxiliary organized an impromptu meal service. Children too young to understand the previous night's danger played tag between parked motorcycles, supervised by watchful veterans. Emma moved among them, accepting thanks, directing repairs, and gradually allowing herself to fully inhabit her community rather than merely residing alongside it. By afternoon, much of the physical damage had been addressed. Bullet holes were patched, broken windows replaced, and overturned soil raked smooth. The emotional aftermath would require longer healing, but this collective response to trauma laid essential groundwork. As evening approached, Charlie organized the Eagles for departure. Most would return to their lives across 3 states, their mission complete. A few would remain in River Valley temporarily, ensuring no remnants of Reynolds' operation remained unaddressed. Before leaving, they gathered in the farmyard, a sea of leather vests and gray hair surrounding Emma, as Charlie presented her with an eagle patch. "Honorary member," he explained, as she accepted the emblem, embroidered with the thunderbolt-clutching eagle. "You earned it." "I'm honored," Emma replied sincerely, "though I hope we never need to assemble like this again." "That's always the prayer," Charlie agreed. "But if trouble returns, so will we." The Eagles departed as they had arrived, with disciplined formation and thundering engines. Their absence left Harper Farm quieter, but fundamentally changed, no longer isolated by secrets and vigilance. Spring brought renewal to Montana, melting snow, revealing the first tender shoots of green across Harper Farm's expansive fields. The morning sun warmed the newly constructed structure behind the main house, a handsome building of natural wood and stone, its large windows allowing light to flood the interior. Inside, Emma arranged leather-bound volumes on custom shelves, each book positioned with care. Law texts, historical references, literary classics. The rebuilt library of Judge James Harper, destroyed during Reynolds' search, now restored as a living memorial. 6 months had transformed both landscape and lives. Reynolds' criminal network had been systematically dismantled, with prosecutions continuing across multiple states. Sterling's testimony had proven invaluable, leading investigators to financial records, property holdings, and corrupt officials previously thought untouchable. More personally significant, the medical examiner, who had falsified Judge Harper's cause of death, had been identified and charged. Emma's father had finally received justice, his murder officially acknowledged, rather than disguised as natural causes. Liz had indeed returned to the FBI, accepting a senior position with the Special Task Force, handling corruption cases uncovered through Reynolds's files. She'd purchased property near Emma's farm, a small cabin she visited most weekends, gradually reconnecting with the Montana roots she'd abandoned decades earlier. Charlie Thompson had gained unexpected celebrity status in motorcycle circles, the story of the Thundering Eagles' stand against organized crime spreading through veteran communities nationwide. His repair shop now displayed a sign reading, "By appointment only," the result of more business than he could comfortably handle. Sheriff Dawson had announced his retirement effective next month, endorsing his most promising deputy as successor. The events at Harper Farm had taken their toll on him, though he'd never admit it publicly. Sophia maintained regular contact, her new supervisory position, keeping her busy but not too busy for occasional visits. She'd developed an unexpected interest in horseback riding, with Emma providing lessons during her stays. As for Emma herself, the transition from isolated vigilance to community engagement had proceeded with surprising ease. The psychological weight of 15 years hypervigilance had lifted, allowing her to rediscover aspects of herself long suppressed by necessity. The sound of vehicles approaching drew her attention from the bookshelves to the library's wide windows. A caravan had appeared on the driveway, official-looking government SUVs flanked by motorcycle escorts wearing the distinctive leather vests of the Thundering Eagles. Emma stepped onto the library's covered porch as the vehicles parked in the circular drive. Liz emerged from the lead SUV dressed in formal FBI attire, carrying a polished wooden case. Behind her came a distinguished older man Emma recognized as the current Attorney General of the United States. Across the property, more vehicles arrived, Sheriff Dawson's cruiser, Charlie's truck, and dozens of cars bearing River Valley residents. They gathered on the expansive lawn before the new library building, an impromptu audience for whatever was about to unfold. "What's happening?" Emma asked as Liz approached. Her twin sister smiled. "Something long overdue." The Attorney General stepped forward, extending his hand to Emma. "Ms. Harper, thank you for allowing us to intrude on your property without much notice." "The Harper farm has always welcomed justice," Emma replied, shaking his hand firmly. The official smiled appreciatively at her response. "A fitting sentiment considering our purpose today." A podium had been quickly assembled on the library steps. The Attorney General took position behind it as microphones were arranged. Apparently, media had been notified as well, their cameras now capturing the gathering crowd. 15 years ago, the Attorney General began, his voice carrying across the assembled group. A grave injustice occurred on this very property. Federal Judge James Harper, a man of unwavering principle and courage, was murdered for his determination to expose corruption at the highest levels of our justice system. Emma felt Liz's hand slip into hers as they stood side by side listening. Today we acknowledge that Judge Harper's death was not merely a tragedy, but a sacrifice in service to the ideals upon which our legal system was founded. The evidence he meticulously gathered, preserved by his daughters, has led to the largest anti-corruption investigation in federal history. The Attorney General gestured toward the wooden case Liz had carried. "It is therefore my profound honor, by presidential order, to posthumously award Judge James Harper the Presidential Medal of Freedom, our nation's highest civilian honor, for extraordinary contributions to the integrity of American justice." He opened the case to reveal the medal nestled in blue velvet. Would Emma and Elizabeth Harper please come forward to accept this recognition on their father's behalf? The sisters approached together, a journey 15 years in the making. As Emma accepted the medal, memories of her father flooded through her. Not the painful final images that had haunted her for so long, but earlier moments, Judge Harper teaching her to ride, explaining complex legal principles at the dinner table, demonstrating through daily actions that principles mattered more than convenience. "Thank you," Emma said simply, her voice steady despite the emotion behind it. "Our father believed that justice wasn't just a concept but a practice requiring daily courage from ordinary people. He would be honored not by this medal, but by knowing his work continued even after he could no longer carry it himself." Applause rippled through the gathered crowd, not merely polite but heartfelt. These people had witnessed the culmination of Judge Harper's legacy in the protection of their community from Reynolds's organization. After the formal presentation, The gathering transformed into an impromptu dedication ceremony for the new library. The Attorney General and his entourage eventually departed, leaving the community to celebrate in their own way. Charlie appeared at Emma's side as she watched River Valley residents exploring the library, children examining books, elders studying the photographs of Judge Harper displayed on the walls. "Your father would be proud," the old Marine observed, "not just of the metal, of what you've built here." "It wasn't just me," Emma replied, gesturing toward the assembled community. "All of this happened because people stood together." "That's the secret Reynolds never understood," Charlie agreed. "He thought power came from fear and money. Real power comes from people who choose to stand beside you, not people forced to stand behind you." As afternoon stretched toward evening, the crowd gradually thinned. Eventually, only a small group remained. Liz, Charlie, Sophia, Sheriff Dawson, and a few close friends gathered on the library's porch, sharing stories and memories as Montana sunset painted the landscape in gold and crimson. "I've been thinking," Emma said during a natural pause in conversation, "about what comes next." "For the farm?" Liz asked. "For all of it." Emma gestured toward the horizon. "Reynolds is gone. Dad's name is cleared. The vigilance that defined 15 years of my life is no longer necessary. So what now?" Sheriff Dawson leaned forward in his chair. "My replacement's been asking about establishing a youth program, teaching kids about agriculture, writing basic life skills. Says they need more community mentors." "Sounds like something Judge Harper would approve of," Charlie commented. Emma nodded thoughtfully. "It does, doesn't it?" As darkness fell, the small gathering reluctantly dispersed. Liz would return to her FBI duties in the morning. Sophia had an early flight to catch. Sheriff Dawson needed to train his replacement. Emma walked them to their vehicles, exchanging embraces and promises of future gatherings. Finally, only Charlie remained studying the night sky with appreciation. Only those who have faced mortality truly develop. "Remember what you asked me that night at the fair," he said suddenly. "When Sterling's men had you cornered." Emma smiled slightly. "What's a farm girl gonna do?" 6 months later, I think we have our answer." Charlie gestured toward the library, the repaired farm, the community that had gathered to honor Judge Harper. "A farm girl rebuilds, remembers, carries on. With a little help from her friends," Emma added. "Exactly." Charlie climbed into his truck, starting the engine. "Those bikers from Chicago are still talking about what happened here, you know. Word spread through every criminal organization in the Midwest." "What are they saying?" "That if you're thinking about bringing trouble to River Valley County, you'd better remember the farm girl and her 99 thunder-bringing friends." Charlie grinned. Some stories improve with distance. After Charlie departed, Emma returned to the library. She moved through the space, slowly turning off lights, straightening books, savoring the peace of completion. In the main reading room, she paused before a large photograph of her father, Judge James Harper, in his judicial robes expression, serious but eyes kind. "We did it, Dad," she said softly to the image. "All of it." She placed the Presidential Medal of Freedom in a display case beneath the photograph. Not for her father's vanity, he had possessed little, but as a reminder to future generations that principles outlast those who hold them. Outside, Emma stood on the porch gazing across her property. The farm that had been her refuge, then her fortress, now represented something different possibility. Not just agricultural fields to be planted and harvested, but fertile ground for whatever she chose to cultivate next. In the distance, a lone motorcycle engine rumbled, an eagle passing by on evening patrol, maintaining the vigilance Charlie had promised. The sound faded into the Montana night, replaced by the eternal chorus of crickets, wind and pine trees, and the quiet certainty that some battles once won need never be fought again. Emma Harper, farmer, daughter, protector, builder, smiled into the darkness. The question that had defined her confrontation with Reynolds now carried a different answer. What's a farm girl gonna do? Whatever's necessary, whatever is right, whatever comes next, with thunder always ready to return if needed.